for me personally, the thing that I kept telling myself and that I would tell all thought leaders, I kept saying, why not me? Why shouldn't this work? If I believe in this idea, if I believe in this work, if I have the sort of support behind it, and I've seen that when I put it out into the world, it's had some kind of impact, then why shouldn't it continue to reach people and make some kind of positive effect in the world? Like why not?
This is Breaking Through the Noise, practical strategies from emerging thought leaders who've actually broken through the noise on their terms. I'm your host, Catherine Jelinek. Let's get real and let's get into it. Hello, everyone. So today it's my great pleasure to get to welcome Ben Schuman-Stoler. Ben, you are the founder of Kollo Media, which we're all excited to find out more about. And also, we are so lucky that you're our partner and collaborator in Europe for the Skinny platform. So welcome, Ben.
Thank you, Catherine. Very happy to be here and excited for our talk and our recorded talk, not like a chit chat. So I'm excited.
Yeah, well, let's make it like a chit chat, but we're focused today, or we're going to try to be. So everybody, Ben has had Kollo Media, his media company, for less than a year. And he's already gotten an episode to be aired on BBC, their radio documentary for World Service. And so we're focused today on that and his nuggets, lessons learned, how he cracked that door open. And please share more about your Returning Germans' Stolen Skulls, which was the project you did. Yes? Talk to us about...
Yeah.
Well, probably a little bit about Kollo Media's why, and then why that project. How did that connect? Why was that inspiring to you?
Sure. So Kollo Media, I've worked in let's say subscriber-based content for more than a decade and learned a lot about the value, like the actual value of ideas and how they affect people's lives, and that people will want to engage with them and share them and use them in their lives if they're presented in the right way. And so the base of Kollo Media is that ideas are valuable and that ideas matter. When I got started on all of that, though, I realized my size, my scale, my risk budget, my realities meant that I wasn't just going to start like the Spotify of, or the Uber of, or the Netflix of, I was going to have to find my own way at my own pace and my own size. So, the founding why was that there is value in the power of ideas, and that I had seen that the right presentation and mix and sort of platforming of ideas, especially in audio where I've had the most experience recently, could be the basis of a successful media business.
Okay, so I connect with that. But then tell me how like a story about stolen skulls is your first representation of Kollo Media in the world.
Yeah, so when you start thinking about the space out there and how you can differentiate and where you want to plant your flag, I realized that I didn't really want to compete for like the number one personal transformation space, newsletter, podcast, YouTube channel or something. I realized that I didn't really want to compete to be the number one psychology space or the number one urban living, lifestyle brand or something. I didn't really identify with any of these. In previous jobs, I've also learned from putting out so much audio content that there's usually in a catalog a mix of content that attracts people to your brand, and then there's usually a part of that catalog that keeps people to your brand. So that sort of like engagement and growth dance, if you can picture it, meant that it's often hard to hit the perfect sweet spot between those two. And instead of doing something that would be widely easy to follow, clear, I decided to go niche and much more specific, much more targeted. And for me, history is exactly one of those topics that keep people coming back to a media brand because it's so specific and it reaches a really passionate and often smaller target group. Plus, I wanted to do something about history that had some kind of contemporary relevance, and if not political, then social cultural impact today. Um,
And what
and
is
I have to
that?
say,
Yes, with the
specifically about the
story.
story.
Hmm.
Well, the story actually came from a friend of mine who's a journalist, and he writes for a big English language outlet in Berlin. And he'd been kind of poking around this story when he heard that there was going to be um, some research released about the number of human ancestral remains held in Berlin museums. And he started poking around and he started looking at museum websites and he started to realize there's like some had pages about it, some didn't. This is like quite a sensitive topic that had been in the news because of the Benin bronzes and it was like connecting to a lot of things. I was in Chicago at some point and went to the Field Museum and saw that a bunch of the exhibitions had been covered um, and they were like because of respect to First Peoples ancestral remains that were in the exhibitions.
Wow.
Um, there were also people walking around the museum kind of offering information and context about that. So it was like something that felt relevant. There's also been political. I mean, America, there's a law passed in America about that. There's been, like it's been in the been in political agendas, and it ties to like a kind of contemporary understanding of history because and how it affects us. For example, in Berlin, there's been a lot of debate around certain street names that were named after um, German colonial administration officers in German colonies. But like this is all over the place. How do we know about our past? How do we think about our past, and why does it matter? Um, yeah,
I see that. That's actually really compelling first start here, friend. So then where did you say I'm going to make this something on BBC and
right.
yes, how I'm going to start?
So the idea, so Kollo Media's idea that ideas can be powerful. Um, and valuable, and you can build a business around the right idea at the right time to the right people. Wasn't like, okay, let's go sell a show to the BBC or let's go sell a show to Netflix or something. The idea was to build a good catalog and a good, and ideally an audience that would be attracted to that catalog. So it was first focused on making something good before it was focused on the commercial side. And that's like a luxury of getting started because you can start with a project like that. Um, and so we started producing, we started making, started saying started collaborating, started bringing people on, started talking about it. And eventually we realized, okay, we can really put out a show here. We found a media partner, which turned out to be the magazine um, that my friend writes at, where the story about human remains in Berlin museums also became the cover story of the magazine. So suddenly we had a media partner. Then we had a bunch of audio that we could turn it to. Then we started a newsletter. Then we had an RSS feed, and then we had a YouTube channel. And all of a sudden, you build up enough kind of assets around the core story, around the core idea. Um, when it became time, yeah,
And all
go
of
ahead.
these we're talking you were building up around this specific story with the skulls, yes.
That's right. And even more kind of strategic or bigger than that, the show was called Dig Where You Stand.
Hmm.
And the it comes from a Swedish writer, and it's has that phrase has a whole long history also. Um, but the idea of the show was that it would just be one of the properties within, let's say, the Dig Where You Stand format, which could be a much bigger thing. So the idea of human remains being related to German history, museums, fantastic. But maybe Dig Where You Stand will be something about memory and history and how it affects us today. Slightly bigger that can incorporate multiple shows within the format. So once we made the show and we built a bit of an audience for it and we had a lot of content about it, we started looking, okay, now that we have all of this, how can we, you know, flex it, leverage it, get it to more people, think about it commercially, think about it, um, and think about it in different ways. And we pitched it to the BBC as a documentary. They do every year. They open up a pitch like that. We worked
So
with a
that's
studio that
find online, like you just it's like a link in an email or
yeah, but you have to work with a studio that they recognize.
okay.
So you have because the show was good and showed that we knew what we were doing in producing a high quality show, we could go to a studio and say, "Hey, will you help us do this pitch to the BBC?" And because they could trust us, because they were putting their name on the line also. So that was again part of this decision of going sort of niche and high quality was to win these contacts and these partnerships instead of going more like fighting over a more popular space, but maybe lower quality or maybe, you know, less uh, shareable because it would be less original and less distinctive. This was like there's only kind of one show like this out there, right? So, and we had all this work and we had all these contacts and we'd done all this research and we'd done all this reporting and we had all this audio and we had all these, you know, emails and contacts all over the world on this topic. So when we went to the BBC, we were really prepared. We were really like in a good, strong position to make this pitch. And we made it clear for them why this is an interesting story and what their audience would benefit from. Again, this is like a very specific thing tied to history, people who love history, but also kind of surprising how it affects people today. There was also a human interest element of the story because we had talked to somebody. I mean, that's what the documentary ended up being about, but somebody who came to Berlin to bring home the remains, the skull of his grandfather, but then couldn't. So, but basically, this is all tied to to the idea at the beginning, which is that like the right idea could be kind of flexed in different ways, and yeah, it's a massive application process, pitch process with BBC with multiple rounds and calls and everything. And then in the end, we did it and we spent, yeah, then we made it.
You did. And you aired in July. So if you had to summarize it into like the one thing that cracked the door open here to get you through into something like BBC, I mean, I'm hearing the consistent thread, but how would you phrase that? Like, what is the strategy that got you there?
I wrote down a different thing for the crack, but
That's okay. I like it.
it's good. I mean, like for me personally, the thing that I kept telling myself and that I would tell all emerging, I don't know if they want to be thought leaders or people that just have something to say or that want to share ideas, was I kept saying, you know, why not me? Why shouldn't this work? Like, why, right? Like, if I believe in this idea, if I believe in this work, if I have the sort of support behind it, and I've seen that when I put it out into the world, it's had some kind of impact, then why shouldn't it continue to reach people and make some kind of positive effect in the world? Like why not? In other words, it was a way to overcome any kind of analysis paralysis or fear of putting yourself out there in public or fear of doing the work. You know, we're all very busy and distracted.
You're putting a lot of energy and effort into something that's very focused. And here you are, and you have a very specific shot and you take it. I almost like envision like you're like shooting at a very small goal on purpose, but that's exactly what you did. Like you got
Yeah,
yourself to the point on purpose. Like you this is very niche, this is very focused. Yes. And
but
you took
also if it wasn't the BBC, it would have been something else. I mean, in fact, there's more. Like it keeps going. My collaborator Peter on the show will write a book about it. That like he's signed with an agent now. Like there will be maybe more videos that we can use that content for. There will be a season 2 of Dig Where You Stand for sure. We did a live event with a bookstore here in Berlin that people came in the pouring rain in the summer and like shared an evening with us, and we talked to professors who have put the show on their curriculum for university classes. If it wasn't the BBC, it would have been something else. What the BBC was about was, so I mean, and probably there were dozens of like failed versions of the BBC where we had reached out to people and said, "Hey, should we partner up and make something together, reach more people? This is a great idea. We're building this audience." That the BBC said yes, and that they're like a worldwide known brand, and that we're on the radio is super cool, obviously,
it's cool.
and like a real feather in our cap, and sort of proves out the model. But if it had been, a newspaper or a newsletter or a blog or a YouTube channel or something, that would have been fine also. Um, and it will be probably eventually. And if it's not this idea, then it'll be the next show or the next idea. So the crack was kind of like that. As long as the focus was on the sort of quality of the way we delivered the idea and the relevance of it, that it wasn't just only for us, but that we were delivering something that was interesting to other people, that was for an audience that we had in mind, and not just like Ben's passion project or, Ben and Peter's whatever we want to be famous show. Like it never was. And so the belief was always that because we really believed this was a good idea and that we did a good job of presenting it, that it would find its audience. And as it started to find its audience, we just kept going on it and kept trying to kind of double down into, okay, well then where else can it work? How else
Mm.
can it work? But the
This is
idea was always the core.
this is a huge example of recycling your media to some degree, but this is your plan and your point, that you had a very good story, a very well done idea, high quality production of it, and then how many ways that can be used and extrapolated on. And then eventually, when you're doing something so quality, you open the high quality doors.
Yeah.
And your
Well, yeah.
eventually yes was in a matter of months. So that's my big bravo to you. I mean, that's not usual given the intentionality, thoroughness, high quality that you put into this. That's not usually done in months.
No, I mean, there was a lot of research. I mean, that's a lot of work. And also, people who, and there's like the 10 years of career experience or whatever before that. And there's, so everything builds on top of everything, I guess. The other thing I guess I would say about this is the whole time we were really focused on why should people spend their time on this? I think that's a really useful focusing question. Like, no one has time. They're giving, like, why does this deserve their time?
What was your answer to that?
Because it's important, because the way we think about history and the way we remember history and the way we present it in the museums and the way the kind of official government sponsored state museums talk about history and the way that people all over the world remember history actually affects us today, and it means something that basically every European capital has human remains in their collection. um, and yeah, that there are, and specifically for the cases we were talking about, that we have to think a bit in a more challenging, broader way about ways to deal with this history than just kind of a kind of black and white thing. But it's getting too much into the weeds of the actual content, I
No,
think.
I appreciate that though. I really love that, and challenging us on how are we going to feel about ancestral remains as a,
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, I think you can take that same approach to work I've done, audio work that Kollo Media has done with business magazines or with
yeah,
financiers that venture, not venture capitalists, but like it's a different kind of funding fund that we've worked, like the different commercial work we do. We're also constantly thinking of, why should anybody listen to this? Are we making that clear? Why should people spend their incredibly valuable time with the idea that we want to share?
important questions we all must ask. So then this hit the world. How did it go? Like, what's the reception been since July when this was released?
It's been good.
What is good?
July, I mean, the BBC doesn't share all of its data with us, but there was like this kind of thing ends up moving by word of mouth. So basically, the only like proven way that anything really gets passed around besides massive media budgets is word of mouth. I mean, massive marketing budgets. And so I know that just like the show we made last year, it's out there being passed around among the people that find it interesting. It's now on the BBC feeds, and we had this live event to kind of celebrate its launch, where we talked to a lot of the activists in Berlin that came, and the people in this community, and um, we learned that like this is a topic that's going to that's going to keep going.
That's cool.
So it didn't feel like the end of something, like it was released and then now it's over. It felt like we contributed to a sort of, what do you call it? Like we contributed to the ways, the discussions that people are having about this all over the world, and that's cool. And I hope that keeps going.
Did you notice a bump in all of your other followings and numbers and
Yeah,
things after it was aired.
yeah. But also, we're talking about this now, and it becomes like something else we talked about, and it's a different kind of bona fide. It's a different kind of, it's something I could put on my website if I wanted to. It's something I could put on, having a media partner or working with someone like the BBC obviously is something that people have heard about. So if you go and say, if a company or a producer or somebody wants to work with Kollo Media, and they're like, I don't know if they can do that. They're like, well, they run the World Service and, reached whatever 500 million people over the World Service. Like it's probably fine. Like probably they can do whatever project I have, because this was
Mhm.
fine for the BBC. It was good enough for the BBC. It'll probably be good enough. It's a
Hopefully.
good beginning. It's a good beginning of a conversation. I
Yeah.
hope whatever we make is good enough also.
Really, I'm really thrilled for you. I mean, like, this is not something everyone can say. I know you have decades behind all of this, but congratulations on being able to produce this within your first year of Kollo Media. So, any advice to yourself looking back, like at the beginning of this whole journey, any little thing that you'd say that would have saved you time?
The advice that I kept getting from people that had started their own media work was, there's something you feel like you don't feel super fast at, like hire someone to do it. And I'm still learning that even now, I think, because there's also something so fun about learning new things and trying new things. And that's kind of what I love about having my own company and own approach. But I think I could have saved a lot of stress and sort of anxiety if I had pulled an expert on certain things in a bit sooner, instead of banging my head against a wall for a while and thinking I'll never do this. I'm going to ruin the whole thing. It's all going to be my fault forever.
Anything
And then,
specific that you mean? Like what expert could have been useful?
well, I did a lot of the audio production myself,
Hmm.
and that was very nerve-wracking.
Mm. To make sure you did it
uh,
well. And yeah, I get that.
Yeah, I mean, I've been an audio producer for whatever 100 years, but um, I felt the pressure. Yeah, I would say that the moments of collaboration, maybe this boils it down. Um, Moments of collaboration were always more fruitful and creative than the time I the time I spent alone. So, and I think we sometimes, in service of like focus, we underestimate the power of collaboration.
Thank you.
or
That is a
or
nugget.
yeah, or maybe like in service of efficiency we underplay the value of, especially in anything creative, like co- collaboration and working together with somebody is super important.
Yes, I think there's a huge value when you're, you know, a emerging thought leaders, like dealing with ideas, got to get it out of your own bubble. And a lot happens when you do that. Like when you start having that conversation with others, little, yes, time gets used, but little other leaps happen.
Absolutely.
Other, yeah, things occur. Well, Ben, this was very fruitful. And I think that there's a lot of lessons I've learned from it. Thank you so much for your time. And I mean, I've said it several times already, but a major congratulations to you in what you've already achieved. And I'm excited to hear about other doors this continues to open. It's lovely to hear that it's just this like continuing open door rather than one door that opened.
Yeah, thank you. And it was very nice to do this format together, and looking forward to seeing and hearing it.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, everyone, thank you so much for listening and tune in for next time. Take care.
Bye bye.
Thank you for listening to Breaking Through the Noise. You can follow us on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. And drop a comment on topics you want to hear about in future episodes. We'd love to hear that. Thanks again for tuning in. Till next time.